How's it going?
It's going. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Matt. I'm very excited to talk to you because, as the star of League of Their Own, I've watched the series twice now, and I've been mesmerized by your performance, which is both heartbreaking and also hilarious. So I'm very excited to chat, and thank you for
Thank
joining.
you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So I wanted to talk about first that you were recognized at the Indie Spirit Awards this year and what that experience was like for you.
It was one of those it's really trite to say, but I was just like, I'm just so glad to be here. Like, I don't care what happens. I just want to be in the room with all this talent and this beautiful energy. And it didn't feel like a lot of other award things that I've been at that felt maybe it could be a little stuffy and a little bit like fake claps. It was like everyone was really supportive and got to meet some amazing people from films that I love and TV shows that I've adored. So I was just along for the ride, you know. So it was great.
Not long after the Indie Spirit Awards, Amazon announced that A League of Their Own would conclude with a four-episode second season. What was your reaction?
Yeah, really excited that we get to tell this story again, however fleeting. I think we're in this time where I'm seeing so many really wonderful shows kind of get the nit, as it were, that I kind of feel that we're more privileged than a lot of other people, that we still get to tell this story of this show, and we get to sort of rob the bank, you know, as they say. And so I feel privileged that we get to get the gang back together and get on this horse again. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I was excited to see that it would get 4 additional episodes, because I was worried that it was going to be cancelled before seeing what else would happen, because at the end of season 1, of course, Clance is pregnant, and there's so much going on in her life. But as I understand, you were also a writer on the series too.
Yeah, I was in the writer's room, which was brilliant. Yeah.
So what was that conversation with Abby Jacobson and Will Graham? Because it is based on the Penny Marshall film, and obviously the TV show extends it outwards so that there's more characters included, not only in the Peaches, but also within the racial demographic of that time. What were those conversations about, bringing in different elements of the story into the show?
Well, the thing that hooked me for the show was when Abby said, because I remember the film really well, and I could never quite put my finger on why there's this scene with this black woman and a voiceless black woman, and she throws this ball at Gina Davis, and Gina Davis catches it, and it's like, ow, that hurts. And it's so iconic. And I think I was so young, I didn't quite understand why I was resonating with it. But that moment particularly, even when the memory of the film had faded, it was just that moment. And I realized she looked like me and no one else in this film did. And there was just something there. And so when Abby was talking to me about what they wanted to do with this film, this show, how they wanted to adapt the film into a series. And she said, do you remember that moment with this woman who picks? And I was like, yeah, do I? Yeah. She said, we want to look at the idea of what if we get to go home with her and see her, the fullness of her life, of someone like her. And I was so in, because even as a young person, not quite understanding all the complexities of what that moment was, and Penny Marshall knowing exactly what that was, but realizing at the time it was too much to tell in a few hours in a movie. We get to tell that through a whole series. So playing Clance, being an extension of the world of that woman who we get to go home with, and that she has friends, she has a best friend, she has a mum, she has a dad, she has a full life, and getting to be a part of that life and not just be one of the people, best friend next to her, get to have my own full life as well as her friend, is a dream. And it was absolutely what sold it for me, you know. So just, oh yeah. And I love that we get to tell this story while still honoring the truth of what happened in the time, you know. She wouldn't have been able to play with the Peaches. Yeah. And I think that balance is really, really gorgeous.
What were the conversations around that intersection between having the Peaches on one side, having Max and Clance and Guy and their families on the other side, and being able to bring them both together? Because we see Max and Carson interacting, but whenever there's a scene in the factory where Carson comes in with that pie and some materials for Max, and then Clance, you know, immediately just avoid contact. What were those conversations about, bringing those two elements together into one story?
Yeah, it was always, you know, sort of thinking of Carson and Max as this hinge that, you know, and sort of ordering this story around how they kind of orbited around each other. And I think it was a really beautiful kind of metaphor for the world we were living in, without kind of banging it on the head. We're living in segregation times. This is a difficult time for Black and white people. You get to see that, but you get to see the lack of not being that easy, the relationship between these two leads, but this uneasy friendship and so I think it was lots of conversations about how to do that so it doesn't feel like, oh, we're just doing these two separate shows, and finding really elegant ways to kind of needle and thread things in together. And there are some episodes where it's like we go through so much with the Peaches, and then we're suddenly in what I like to call Black Rockford, and then we're, you know, so far here, and other times they top and tail, and it's this beautiful dance. And it was really curated in the writers' room with a bunch of amazing, talented people.
I mean, I'm hoping for the second season that it's amplified, because I'm kind of expecting like 90-minute episodes. You know, if you get 4,
we want to squeeze the whole lifetime of these characters in these next steps. Absolutely.
Exactly. And I wonder, were you in the writers' room for the second season? Has it stopped because of the writers' strike?
I was not able to be in the writers' room this season, just because I'm in the UK writing on something else. So that was the reason, but I would have loved to. And also I just think, I don't know as much in terms of the logistics of what went on in the writers' room specifically, but I've gotten a sense of where they want to take some of these characters and some of the stories. And I just have to say, it is very exciting. And without spoiling anything, it's very exciting. Yeah, so I can't wait.
Yeah, I was about to say, please spoil. Tell me.
I'm moving to California.
Okay.
I heard the leagues out there are a little bit integrated.
What do you mean a little bit integrated? It's kind of a you either are or aren't thing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, maybe they'll make an exception for people as good as me.
Well, if we're going to California, I have to tell my husband, so.
In researching your background, I was shocked that you are from the UK, because your accent in the show is just flawless and so convincing. And being from Australia myself, I usually have like a sixth sense when I can hear someone, you know, putting on an accent, but I could not tell at all. What was that transformation like for you, especially with putting on the clothes from the 40s and the hairstyles and also the voice?
Yeah, I do love sort of hiding in a character kind of hiding bits of myself, but also completely getting rid of bits of myself so that the character can shine. I love that process so much, and the accent was such a big part of that for me. Just kind of getting a sense of, not just the accent, but just where she's placing her resonance in her voice, and keeping her close enough to that she sounds like Shantae, but sort of having not being. I want this to feel a bit, sometimes an accent can be distracting. It's like, oh, she, and not kind of going there with it, but also feeling like it's authentic enough that we go, she's from the right part of the state. She's Midwest, but she's a Black person, and in that time where we basically just had migration, from a lot of Black people coming from the South. So there's all that kind of stuff, looking at that on a practical, historical level. But then there's just the fun of just playing with voices and just kind of just walking around the States and just testing out the accent as I go to a shop and seeing if anybody notices and things like that. So yeah, it's fun figuring it out.
I mean, it seemed like fun when Clance is drawing and doing her comic books, and she's doing the voices and trying to speak like the characters. And it seemed like you were having a lot of fun with that. Was there a bit that was ad-libbed, or was everything in
that whole? I think there's a bit which is hamburgers and fists or something like that, and I think that's in the script. And then I just started riffing around a lot of that. So a big chunk of that is, and I remember watching that back and going, did I say all of what? Did I say all of that? And I laughed at the fact that I don't even remember doing it. I don't remember doing the ad-lib, but I guess I was deep in Clance mode at that point. So yeah, that was so much fun.
One of my favorite aspects of the show is that friendship between Clance and Max. And the chemistry between you and Shantae was just, it's instant. As soon as you see them in that first episode, did you have a chemistry read together, or was it an instant friendship when you first met? How did you start that?
We didn't, because I was auditioning remotely at the time because I was in the UK. So the first time we actually met was when I was doing chemistry reads for Guy, for my husband. And it was like, we just, and it was, and Abby and Will got us to, and Jamie got us to just do a little bit of improv and playing with each other and trying to figure out a couple of scenes. And so in that, it was just like, boom, we're here, we're best friends instantly. And so it's very rare that I find that with someone where I meet them and I'm just like, oh my gosh, we've known each other forever, right? Right? No, we just met. Oh, okay. So it was like that with Shantae, absolutely.
Yeah. And even with Aaron, who plays Guy, I mean, there was such a love between them, and there was also that chemistry. But within that relationship as well, it was interesting to watch Clance explore her emotional side as well, because she is such a lovely character. But then with Guy going off to war, it really took her character in a different direction, particularly in episode 2 with the crab boil, where she's running around town trying to find crabs and just wants it to be perfect.
So yeah, with the crab boil stuff, that was one of my favorite things to shoot. Firstly, I loved doing that. I loved getting faff around with Shantae, and I think because one, it's so well written, and Clance's motivations, although buried within the character, I think are so clear. She really wants family. She really wants that, and I think she really envies Max's kind of upbringing in her life, and so I think it was quite easy to go into that place of feeling like, I really wanted to make this work. I really wanted to be my first foray into my family to be perfect, and unfortunately it's not. And I know that as me, the actor personally, what that sort of thing about trying to find your family is. And so I don't know, it felt really natural progression to sort of go into that space. And also Jamie directed that episode and was really quite sensitive about how she directed it, and and giving me space to find it as well.
Yeah, and later in the season, there's a lot of tension between Max and Clance, because you can feel that Max is, I think Clance and Max are both very focused on their goals, and where Clance talks about her comic books and everything and, her characters, Max is talking about baseball, and they've both got a very singular vision, but they're so close. But in those scenes with Shantae and having to draw up, more of a conflict with her character, what was that like? What were those conversations with her?
You know what I think it is? With any kind of relationship that's kind of like soulmatey, and I do think Clance and Max are soulmates, there is always also this weird kind of how to untangle, how to, a sort of tangling, a weaving of the things that we are most frustrated about the person. Because even in the pilot, there's this moment where she's just like, no, you stay here, I'll go and sort it out. Just like, like I do every time. There is this kind of niggly little thing that they have with each other that's really ever present. And I do love that they can get spiky and get really hot with each other. I love moments where I get to be like that. I think I'm more spiky in real life than Clance is. So I got to just sort of just lean into to me being a bit like, it's just lovely to give Clance a little bit of edge, So I found those moments really great. But I just think it's that other lovely, nuanced layer of their friendship that we get to explore.
Yeah, and there's a lot about Max that is opening up a lot for Clance, I feel, because especially with her Uncle Bertie, and then, within her own sexuality, there's a lot that in the episodes Clance isn't aware of, and then it starts to open her up a little bit more. Did you find that Clance was maybe, becoming a different person by the end of the season?
I think there was something in terms of how we were talking about playing that, and just that moment, that scene where Max says, I'm going to be hanging out with my Uncle Bertie a lot more, and he's not a freak. I don't know if Clance at that moment necessarily has all the language or the full understanding to understand that she's just come out to her friends, kind of, Yeah. But I think on a kind of subconscious level, she knows there's more there, and all she knows is, and Will said some things like, you don't fully understand it, but you're there for her. And that's kind of, I think, where we are with Clance at the end of that series and that journey. I think she's got a long way to go yet. And I look forward to see the next season kind of unpacking some of that more,
It's going to be interesting to see how Max returns from her travels with the team and expanding her horizons as well. Because even in that dinner scene, I believe it was episode 8 or it was episode 8 with the dinner scene with Tony and the father as well. And they were talking about another character traveling across the world. And Max was saying where she was going, that she might even go to Canada, she might go to Mexico, but it's going to expand her. And I wonder if that will create a fracture within that friendship with Clance, that they're both in very different places. I don't know if you can reveal anything from this set.
I don't know if I can reveal anything either.
Well, what can you let us know about what to expect? Is there a lot of drama on the horizon?
For sure. There's drama, there's love, there's angst, there's fun, there's going to be joy, there's going to be crying, I'm sure, in baseball. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be a really special series. Yeah.
I'm so excited to see it. And thank you so much for the conversation today. And I can't wait to see what happens next.
Thank you so much for your time.
No worries. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.